Life in California during the 70s was a wild time. Rent ran cheap, crime ran high, rock ran roll, and the 49ers ran through a lot of head coaches. As a matter of fact, the 49ers had 3 years of back-to-back-to-back first-year head coaches. The 49ers in 2015-16, as well as the Texans in 2021 and 2022, are the only teams in NFL history to fire first-year head coaches in back-to-back seasons. But this 1970s instance of back-to-back-to-back firings of first-year head coaches is the only one in NFL history. So how did this 3-year period of firings come about, and how did this lead to the dominant San Francisco 49ers 80s franchise we all know of today? The start of the 70s saw playoff success for the 49ers, getting to the NFC Championship in 1970 and 1971, then the divisional round in 1972, however, losing every time to the Dallas Cowboys. This run all came under the leadership of Dick Nolan, who was hired in 1968. This brief period of playoff success was led by a 2-time All-Pro Gene Washington and Hall of Fame cornerback Jimmy Johnson. Not that Jimmy Johnson. However, after 3 losing seasons in a row with a combined record of 16-26, Nolan was fired at the end of the 1975 season. 76 saw the hiring of Monty Clark, the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator who helped with the Dolphins' Super Bowl wins in 1973 and 1974. Clark's offensive wizardry helped put the 49ers atop of the league in terms of rushing statistics and getting an ending record of 8-6. You would think there isn't any way a coach really gets fired after a winning season, but in the offseason, new 49ers GM Joe Thomas and owner Ed Bartolo saw it differently. Clark served as a somewhat general manager in that 76 season, but when Thomas came in as the new GM, Clark did not want to give up his general manager duties. Eventually, this disagreement unrolls, and Clark refusing to work under Thomas led to Clark's firing. With the new ownership in place, their first hire became Ken Meyer. Meyer, the second choice of Joe Thomas, more on that later, got hired with a history of only being a quarterback coach, including coaching the likes of Joe Namath and Ken Stabler. Now, in 77, Meyer was given Jim Plunkett, a future Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Raiders. However, a successful season at the QB position and season in general was something they did not have. Plunkett had 14 interceptions with 9 touchdowns and was sacked 30 times. And although a record of 5-9 isn't the worst, it's nothing to boast about. At the start of the offseason in 1978, Joe Thomas saw a chance to get the coach he really wanted from the get-go, meaning Ken Meyer was not in favor and was fired as a San Francisco 49ers coach. The coach Joe Thomas really wanted and ended up hiring was Pete McCulley. McCulley was Thomas's first piece to fixing his winning 49ers vision, but coaches are only one part of the equation. The other part is players. Now at the start of the 78 season, McCulley had to work with a rookie quarterback in Steve DeBerg and one of the youngest defensive units in the league, and a front office who traded a first, second, third, fourth round pick for a 31-year-old O.J. Simpson. Yeah, this season was not good. This 78 season was so bad, the 49ers started 1-9 in their first 9 games, with McCulley actually being fired after that 9th game. Thomas's football vision was in the trash, and the appointment of interim head coach Fred O'Connor saw the rest of the season finish with a 2-14 record. Simpson ran for 500 yards in 10 games, DeBerg had 22 interceptions, and the defense gave up 350 points. Joe Thomas was fired after this 1978 season, as well as Fred O'Connor not being extended as head coach, making 1976 to 1978 the first time and only time in NFL history that team has hired and fired back-to-back-to-back first-year head coaches. The 49ers were in shambles. After coming off the worst year record-wise in your team's history, it shouldn't be too hard to follow up with a better season, right? Well, that's where you're wrong, because once again, the 49ers finished with a record of 2-14 in the 1979 season. You would also think that the head coach for that season also got fired for his bad performance. However, this year was different. You see, back in 1979, some guy named Bill Walsh was hired, as the head coach and GM. Walsh implemented an offense known as the West Coast offense, where it essentially focuses more on passing than running the football. Unfortunately, Walsh was still stuck with the likes of Steve DeBerg under center, but the passing game improved, and so did the roster. Many people during the time may not have noticed the gems that joined the 49ers in that 79 season. Second-round pick Joe Montana, 10th-round pick Dwight Clark, from Canada Dwight Hicks, and from the Steelers Dwayne Board, all becoming crucial pieces to the franchise's 1980s run. Improvement was indeed seen by the league. The 49ers finished 6-10 and 12th in points per game in the league and 5th in total passing yards. Montana even started 7 games and threw 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Walsh finally knew he had someone good under center. The only problem was the defense was still not up to par, giving up the second most yards in the league, just behind the Vikings. But with another addition of second-rounder Keenan Turner in the 1980 draft, just gave Walsh another young piece to the defensive core. 81 finally saw Montana's first full season as a starting quarterback, leading the team to a 13-3 record with 3,500 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, and second in MVP votes. And in this season, defense massively improved, giving up the second least amount of yards to opposing offenses and the second least amount of points scored against them. Along with the stars Hicks, Board, and Turner, the defense included 1981 first-round pick and eventual Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, 1981 second-round pick and two-time Pro Bowler Eric Wright, and 1981 third-round pick and two-time Pro Bowler Carlton Williamson, as well as other key contributors, making the 49ers a scary team. And with this 13-3 record, the 49ers set themselves up as the 1 seed in the playoffs. First game of the divisional round came up against the Lawrence Taylor New York Giants. The 49ers won 38-24, seeing themselves up with the Dallas Cowboys in the conference championship. The Cowboys whooped the Bucs in the divisional round and were looking to add another Super Bowl to their legacy. Tom Landry led the Cowboys with players such as Tony Dorsett, Too Tall Jones, Drew Pearson, and Randy White on that team. January 10th, 1982 at Candlestick Park, a matchup of superstar power and head coaching masterminds was to take place. The first quarter of that game saw the Cowboys take a 10-7 lead with a Danny White touchdown pass, and going into halftime, the score was 17-14. But as we know, Cool Joe was not worried. The third quarter saw Montana lead the team down the field for a Johnny Davis touchdown run, making the game 21-17 going into the fourth quarter. But the Cowboys also did not give up, scoring a field goal and a touchdown, giving them a 27-21 lead. However, after a 13-play, 77-yard drive, one of the greatest plays in NFL history took place.
All those bitter memories against Dallas wiped away by one magical play.
Montana's touchdown to Dwight Clark sealed the victory for the 49ers, and a crack at the Super Bowl against the Bengals, and MVP winner Ken Anderson, where once again, Cool Joe did his thing. After being up 20-0 at half, the Bengals made it close with 20-14, but 2 successful field goals for the 49ers, making the game 26-14, was not enough for the Bengals to come back, even after scoring a fourth quarter touchdown. The 49ers won their first Super Bowl, Montana won his first Super Bowl MVP, Walsh's offense was the new industry standard, and this was how one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history started. All from firing 3 first-year head coaches in a row. And if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, and hitting the bell notification. Thank you.